Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Torah Tuesday. We're going to be digging into the book of Exodus. So we're glad that you're able to join us. Let me start off with prayer. Father, we thank you for this time that we can come before you and study together as a family, a mishpacha, and we can come and learn at your feet and study your word and dig into the book of Exodus, Father. And we pray that you would guide us and direct us with your Spirit, bring us wisdom, knowledge, understanding, counsel, and strength. May the fear of you be upon our hearts and our minds. We just thank you so much. May you be magnified and glorified in all that we do. In your Son, Yahushua's name, we give thanks. Amen. Okay, so we are using a book that Jerry Watkins made. It's called Torah Together. And if you want to get a copy of it, it's for each book of the Torah. So this is the book of Exodus. And you can get that at, I think it's called TorahTogether.com. So we're starting in Va'era on page 9. And so we're going to be reading the first few, let's go from Exodus 6:2 through 12. Would you like to read first? Yeah, 2 through 12.
Okay. And God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as God Almighty, but by my name, the Lord, I did not make myself known to them, and also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, and the land in which they lived as sojourners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of my people of Israel, who the Egyptians hold as slaves, and I have remembered my covenant. Say therefore to the people of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burden of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery to them, and I will redeem you with an outreached arm and with great acts of judgment.
Hold 1 second there. It doesn't look like they see this screen on the, and I'm centered on the, there we go. Okay. That'll help you, bud, if you can see what we're reading.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, continue on there at 7.
I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God, who has brought you out from under the burden of the Egyptians. I will bring you into the land that I swore to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you for a possession. I am the Lord. Moses spoke thus to the people of Israel, but they did not listen to Moses because of their broken spirit and harsh slavery. So the Lord said to Moses, Go in, tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the people of Israel go out of his land. But Moses said to the Lord, Behold, the people of Israel have not listened to me. How then shall Pharaoh listen to me? For I am of uncircumcised lips.
Okay. So let's back up a little bit. I'm going to, just so you guys know, in your windows here, this first window is the NASB. I have the Hebrew text here, the Greek Septuagint text here, and the English translation of the Greek Septuagint over on the far right. When I put a cursor on a word, it's going to show both the Hebrew and the Greek of that word. So you can see the word bring is highlighted here in each one. So I'm just going to back up a little bit because there's a few words I want to take a look at here he says that I'm going to let them go, Pharaoh is going to let them go under compulsion. And this compulsion is the Hebrew word chazakah, means strong, and the Greek is high proud, hupsaleo. The English rendition of the Septuagint says a raised arm. And so I like this that he says, we talked about it last week, we just touched on this first few verses here last week of Exodus 6. It's the 5 I wills. But I wanted to point out that he says here, I appeared, I put it in all blue here, I appeared, I established, and I heard. Those three things. I appeared, I established, and I heard. And so this word appeared is ra'ah, established is the kum, and the heard is the shema. Now we know that shema would be I'm hearing and doing. So I heard your pleas, I heard your cries, I'm going to take action. And so how does he take action? Well, he ends up saying here, the first thing is, I am Yahweh, I am. And then we get into the 5 I wills. I will bring you out. I will deliver you. I will redeem you. I will take you, and I will be your Elohim. Now, the interesting thing is, I wanted to point out, some of these are the same, but this word deliver in the Hebrew is this word hitzalti, but in the Greek, it's deliver. And then we have, after that, I will redeem you, ga'alti. And the Greek is to ransom. To ransom. I'm going to ransom you. So I'm going to bring you out, I'm going to deliver you, and I'm going to ransom you. Interesting, because that's what Yeshua did on the cross. We were redeemed, we were ransomed. And then he says, I'm going to take you, and then I'm going to be your God. The interesting thing about all of these in the Hebrew, I'll start up here. It's hotzeti, hitzalti, ga'alti, and then lachakti. So all of them have that T at the end of the words. Very interesting. So that's what he tells them he's going to do. And then, this is his action part. Remember, I appeared, I established, and now I'm going to hear and do. So he's telling them, I'm going to do these 5 things. And then he closes it by saying, I will take you for my people, and I will be your Elohim. I will be your God. Okay? Hayati. I will be your God. Hayati. To be, to exist. Okay. Any comments or questions before I get into some of the questions that are in the Torah book? Comments or questions? Okay. So, my questions to you is, God promises deliverance. In verses 2 through 8, God speaks very explicitly to Moses. How does he begin and end his statement? What is the essence of his speech to Moses? And is it a reprimand? Any thoughts? Anyone have any thoughts on that? So he begins his statement with, I am Yahweh. So the Old Testament scholars call this an inclusio, and it imparts special significance to the revelation. And God recalls his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, he has heard the groaning of the Israelites and will redeem them, ransom them with an outstretched arm. And God may have been reprimanding Moses for a lack of faith. Okay. God also points out to Moses that his ancestors did not know him by the name of El Shaddai. Why do you think this is significant? Any comments or thoughts or questions? We talked about it a little bit last week, but I didn't have the book up in front of me, so we can add a few other things here to the study of that. Okay. So El Shaddai means God Almighty or God the All-Powerful, which is a good description of God, but not his name, which is Yahweh. Thus, Moses was introduced to the God on a more personal level than Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He came to see this I am, the one who, the Yod-Vave is, I exist. I will be what I will be. So he was introduced to that character trait of the Almighty. And please raise your hand or jump in if you have any questions or comments. Welcome, Deborah. So, welcome. So, did the Israelites believe Moses? No, they didn't, did they? Why? Any thoughts on why? Why didn't they believe him?
I think probably because they had been separated from a relationship with him for so long that they didn't see his power or influence in their life. In fact, just the opposite.
It's very interesting, as I was reading through this today, this signs and wonders that he says he's going to perform in Egypt is reminiscent of the signs and wonders, the miracles that Yeshua did in his day. And they didn't believe either. I mean, he ends up telling them, if you don't believe me, believe at least in the miracles. The signs and the wonders are always, these two words are reminiscent of when God does something special, of his mighty hand. He's doing these mighty things that people have never seen before. As a matter of fact, in the New Testament, when Yeshua did these miracles, a lot of them said, this has never been done before. No one's ever seen this happen in the land before. The same as it took place here. You have a comment? Go ahead.
Well, and in the Old Testament, they're always asking for what will be the sign of
Yeah.
this, what will be this, and he does so many, but yet they still won't.
And Yeshua, they said the same thing then. He says, oh, wicked generation, you always are looking for a sign. But I'm only going to give you the sign of Jonah, right? Anyone on Zoom that have a comment or question? Okay. Just raise your hand or speak out if you do. What was Moses' response when God instructed him to go to Pharaoh again?
He didn't want to because he didn't think Pharaoh, even the Israelites won't listen, and they're God's people, then why would Pharaoh listen?
Yeah. If these people you're setting up a deliverer for, if they're not going to believe me, and they're your people, they know you, how in the world is people that don't know you, that should have the fear of you in them, how are they going to believe anything that I say? That's a good question. I mean, very good question. How long has Moses been in a relationship with the Almighty here, right? So very limited relationships. And why do you, well, you answered that. So the Israelites did not believe Moses because of their discouragement and cruel bondage. He pointed out to God that if the Israelites didn't believe him, Pharaoh wouldn't either. He also referred back to his speech problem. Moses was clearly discouraged and not confident. Hard to believe that a guy trained in Egypt, raised up to be a prominent person in Egypt, would have these issues. But, we'll look at this here in a second. Maybe there's something to learn from the text here. Let's look at this uncircumcised lips. I'll note here he says, I will bring you, to come into the land which I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will give it, Natan, I'll give it to you as a morashah, a possession. I am Yahweh. So Moses spoke thus to the sons of Israel, but they didn't listen because of their despondency. Watch this. I notice that this word despondency can mean shortness, but I noticed in the Greek, let's see here. Let's see, despondency, shortness. Oh, here it is in the Hebrew. So we have kotzer, shortness of spirit. That's not brought out in the English. But in the Hebrew here, it says, you see my cursor, it's kotser, shortness, or broken spirit, ruach. That's interesting. So it was because of their broken or short spirit. Very interesting, and cruel bondage. I wanted to move on down here to verse 12 before we move into the next portion. He says, but how will Pharaoh listen to me? For I am uncircumcised in the Hebrew speech, or uncircumcised lip. I found this interesting because you can see here in the Hebrew it says uncircumcised lip, but let's look and see what the Greek says. Unutterable, irrational, unexpected. Interesting how the Greek gives another little different twist to the whole thing there. You can see on the very bottom of your screen the Greek definition of this word, alogos. My speech is unutterable. My speech is irrational. My speech is unexpected. I'm speechless. Very interesting. So I wanted to highlight that and bring it to your attention as well. Okay. Would anybody online like to read verses 13 through 27? Anyone? Any volunteers? Okay.
Exodus 6:13. And Yahweh spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, and gave them a charge unto the children of Israel and unto Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. These be the heads of their fathers' houses, the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, Hanok and Palu, Hezron and Carmi. These be the families of Reuben. And these are the sons of Simeon, Jemuel and Jamin and Ohad and Yahin and Sohar and Shaul, the sons of the Canaanitish woman. These are the families of Simeon. And these are the names of the sons of Levi, according to their generation: Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And the years of the life of Levi were 137 years. The sons of Gershon, Libni and Shimni, according to their families. And the sons of Kohath, Amram and Izhar and Hebron and Uzziel. And the years of the life of Kohath were 133 years. And the sons of Merari, Mahali and Mushi. These are the families of Levi according to their generation. And Amram took him Jochebed, his aunt, to wife. And she bare him Aaron and Moses. And the years of the life of Amram were 137 years. And the sons of Ishar, Korah, and Nepheg, and Zichri. And the sons of Uzziel, Mishael, and Esaphon, and Zithri. And Aaron took him Elisha Beth, daughter of Abadad, sister of Nashon, to wife. And she bare him Nadab, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. And the sons of Korah, Asir, and Elkanah, and Abishia. These are the families of the Korites. And Eleazar, Aaron's son, took him one of the daughters of Putiel to wife, and she bare him Phinehas. These are the heads of the fathers of the Levites according to their families. These are that Aaron and Moses, to whom Yahweh said, bring out the children of Israel from the land of Egypt according to their armies. These are they which spake to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring out the children of Israel from Egypt. These are that Moses and Aaron. Did you say 27? The end?
Yeah, at end with 27.
Okay.
All right. So,
These are they which spake.
yeah, 27 is the last verse.
Okay.
So we got family record of Moses and Aaron. Why do you think God thought it was important that this genealogy be inserted here? Anyone?
To show that they were a part of the line that the promise was made to, that they were part of that family, and even maybe for future reference, when Aaron did become the priest, that they were tied to the Levites and all that.
It's interesting. It often seems that much of the Torah is taken up with long lists of names detailing the relationships of individuals. This was a common practice among ancient cultures to provide an oral history of clans and tribes. Even today, they provide context, helping us understand the times and people involved in the historical events being described. Very interesting. Anyone else have any thoughts on the genealogies? Well, I mean, Matthew opens up with the genealogy all the way up to Yeshua. So, and I think it's, context. I mean, here's, you're looking at Matthew. It's important to know where Yeshua came from. Where's his line coming from? And so these guys that are going to be high priests and the other guys to be the priesthood, where they came from and how this is, a connection. Anyone else in the Zoom? Yes. He's in right here. Yeah. Yeah, Paul's there. Yeah. Yeah, he's there. He's sending mixed messages. No, I'm kidding. Okay. Any thoughts before we move to my next question? So what are the names of the three clans that make up the tribe of Levi? So Levi has three different clans. What are their names? We have anyone on Zoom? So we have,
It was Gershon, Kohath, and Merari.
That's right, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari.
And
Levi and Aaron came through Kohath. Both their parents were Levites. So you got this from Levi. You've got these three clans, and Aaron comes through this Kohath. All right. Can you determine what tribe Aaron's wife is from? Anyone? Someone want to look up Numbers 1, verse 7? Numbers 1, verse 7. So as someone's looking that up, I want to read this to you. Genealogies often appear at seemingly random points in the Torah. However, they are all linked together in some way. An example, you can find Aminadab, Aaron's father-in-law, mentioned in several places, like the one we're going to read here in Numbers 1:7. Anyone have it? Go ahead.
From Judah, Nahshon, the son of Aminadab.
There we go. So he's from what tribe?
Judah.
From Judah, yeah. So we've got a Yehudite and a Levite connecting here, okay? Interesting. All right, so Aaron, let's read. Would anybody like to read Genesis 6, 6:28 through 7:13. 6:28 through 7:13. Anybody in Zoom or anyone in here? Don't knock yourselves out. Six 28 through 7:13. Okay, I'll read Exodus 6:28. Yeah, you're in Numbers. Oh, okay. Now it came about on the day when Yahweh spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, that Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, I am Yahweh. Speak to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, all that I speak to you. But Moshe said before Yahweh, behold, here he goes again, I am.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant Genesis 6:28.
I did say Genesis? Sorry. My mistake. Exodus 6:28 through 7:13. So he says to Moshe, see, I will make you as God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and your brother Aharon shall speak to Pharaoh, that he let the sons of Israel go out of his land. But I will harden Pharaoh's heart, that I may multiply, here's those words, signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. When Pharaoh does not listen to you, Shema, when he doesn't hear and obey, then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring out my hosts, my people, the sons of Israel, from the land of Egypt, by great judgments. The Egyptians shall know that I am Yahweh, when I stretch out my hand on Egypt and bring out the sons of Israel from their midst. So Moses and Aaron did it, as Yahweh commanded them. Thus they did. Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron 83, when they spoke to Pharaoh. Now Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when Pharaoh speaks to you, saying, work a miracle, then you shall say to Aharon, take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, that it may become a serpent. So Moses and Aaron spoke to Pharaoh, and thus they did just as Yahweh had commanded. And Aaron threw his staff down before Pharaoh and his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh also called for the wise men and the sorcerers, and they also, the magicians of Egypt, did the same with their secret arts. For each one threw down his staff, and they turned into serpents. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Yet Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen to them. Okay. So we started at 6:28. I'm going to back up here. All right. We've got some questions. Aaron, Moses, they meet Pharaoh again. At this second meeting with Pharaoh, how does God handle Moses' faltering lips? How does he handle his faltering lips?
By telling him exactly what to say.
He's telling him.
He assigned Aaron, didn't he?
Say it again, Margaret.
Assigns Aaron as this version says prophet.
Yes. But what does he tell Moses is going to be?
Elohim.
I want to show you something interesting in the Greek over here. over here on this far right side in verse, it's a little different over here. Moses said before Yahweh, look, I am weak voiced. How will Pharaoh listen to me? In the English of the Septuagint, it says, look, I have given you as a God to Pharaoh. But when you look at the actual Greek, it says, I'm going to start right here. It says, attention, look, to give you, God, Pharaoh. It's almost as if the Greek is saying, I'm going to give to you this God who's been called Pharaoh. A little different than what the English and Hebrew says, like Moses is going to be a God, but what if Elohim is saying, this guy that has been called a God, I'm going to give him to you. He's going to be in your hand. Very interesting. A little bit different twist that the Greek seems to portray. Because I know a lot of people, we've talked about this in years past. Why would God say he's going to make Moses as a God? Well, if we look at the Greek in the literal that it says, it's really saying, I'm going to give this God Pharaoh, so-called God Pharaoh, into your hand. Seems to make a little more sense. I can wrap my head around that a little better, but, something to consider and think about. Any comments or thoughts on that?
I would think it's if it's the same sentence, it wouldn't be, because he's talking to them versus Pharaoh, going against Pharaoh, and so he's almost giving like an order of authority with an assistant, as Aaron the prophet. So
Yep.
That would be, if you look at Moshe as being the Elohim, the scriptures has Elohim here as mighty one.
Do you see the Greek word down here? I have
Translation. Yeah.
I highlighted the Greek word for prophet. See what it is in Greek? Prophetes.
No,
Now you know where we get the English word from. It's actually really a Greek word. Prophet.
what is it? What is it?
Well, I have it highlighted here,
Yes.
and you can see down
Yeah.
in the box at the bottom, it says prophetes. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully that'll show it again here. See it now? Prophetes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Paul, or did someone else have a comment? Thought I heard someone speaking. Did you have something to share?
I think it's interesting, like you said, because Pharaoh was considered a god.
Yep.
And so he was, just way above any other people, way above reproach or anything. And so to have someone come into his court who is not equal, but that much farther above him, would probably really throw Pharaoh back on his heels, because he's not used to being disobeyed, challenged, anything like that, let alone by someone who obviously can show that they have more power, and yet he claims to be a god.
It's interesting you say that, because do you think Moses knows that Pharaoh is heralded throughout Egypt as a god?
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
most definitely.
So if the Greek is right, and God is Elohim is telling Moses, this God of Egypt, I'm going to give him into your hands. That would be quite a statement. I mean, it'd be like, wow, really?
Little confident builder.
It'd be a confident builder, wouldn't it? Yeah. But so would the other. To tell him you're going to be as a god to Pharaoh, that would be a confidence builder as well. Yeah. Yes. So the word Elohim in a teaching video that Ward has made, and through Michael Heiser's Unseen Realm, the Divine Council, the word Elohim really means a spiritual being. So that's why Pharaoh, all these other gods of Egypt, were known as spiritual beings. They were Elohims, but they were spiritual beings. Pharaoh was considering himself to be an Elohim or a spiritual being. Do you have anything you wanted to add to that? Oh, I don't know how to do that. So Ward and I did a little teaching video on the Elohim and the Divine Council. So if you'd like to have a link to that video that we did, send me an email and we'll get you the link sent so you can watch the video. Just send me an email, Mark at livingmessiah.com. Okay, it explains this whole Elohim, why in the Hebrew it means a plurality, because there were many spiritual beings in heaven. So it kind of goes into that. So it kind of helps explain it. Okay, that good? Okay. So let's move to the next question. In chapter 7, 1 through 5, God gives at least two reasons for his coming actions. What are they? In verse 1 through 5. Any thoughts? So in verse 1 through 5, God gives at least two reasons for his coming actions. Okay. So one is to bring his people out of Egypt, and the other so that the Egyptians will know that Yahweh is Elohim. Now, I've mentioned this before, and I hope I can find it. I'll look over here. So he says in other places in Scripture this very language here. He says, I bring out my hosts, my people, the sons of Israel, from the land of Egypt by great judgments. And when I do this, the Egyptians will know that I am Yahweh when I stretch out my hand and bring them out of their midst. He actually says this same thing is going to happen at the end. And I think it's the same language. Let me see if I can pull it up. I should have done this before.
Is it Ezekiel 28?
Say it again.
Ezekiel 28,
Can you read it?
28, 25. Let me get it. Thus says the Master Yahweh, when I have gathered the house of Israel from the peoples among whom they are scattered, I shall be set apart in them before the eyes of the nations, and they shall dwell in their own land, which I gave to my servant Jacob. And they shall dwell safely. Is that it?
Yeah, that's one of them.
And they shall dwell safely and build houses and plant vineyards and dwell safely when I execute judgments on all those around them who despise them, and they shall know that I am Yahweh, their Elohim.
So notice that he's saying through the judgments, through the signs and wonders that he does, the nations are going to know that he is Elohim. Wow. So he's telling us that here in Egypt and in the end when he returns, He's going to execute judgments on the land. As a matter of fact, at one place it says, I will execute judgments in the land that you were scattered to, in the lands that you've been, dispersed to, and from there I will bring you out, and those nations will know that I am Yahweh when I do my wonders and my judgments in their midst. So that means wherever the people of Israel are, whether they're blood descendants or whether they're grafted in, they're all Israel. Judgments are going to come. God's going to bring them out, and he's going to prove to the nations, this is my people, and I'm their God, and they're going to know it. I love it how he keeps doing things the same way. We can trust in him. We can count on him to be that same Elohim that he was in the past. Very awesome. If you have comments or questions on Zoom, just speak out and I'll notice or let you speak. So here's another question. How old was Moses and Aaron at this time? 80 and 83. Boy, there's still hope for all of us, isn't there? Man, when some folks think it's all over and done and they're not going to get used anymore, the Most High gives us another example that, looky here, you're always eligible if your heart is willing. He just wants willing hearts, people that are willing to serve, the people that will actually shema, hear and act upon it. I suppose it's okay that we say, yeah, I will, but, I'm just not real good at my speech. Or, yeah, I will, but I'm not real fast. Or, yeah, I will, but I think that's important. So, yeah, they're 80 and 83. Wow, amazing stuff. God's agenda. God's actions are usually efficient, accomplishing several goals at the same time. According to Exodus 7, 4-5, the two major goals that he intends to achieve with his upcoming actions, he does them through this signs and wonders. So who threw down the staff in front of Pharaoh? Aaron. We're going to look at that. Let me get my cursor over here to the screen. By the word judgment is shephet. In the Greek, it's this word vengeance. Vengeance. Judgment or vengeance. Okay? And here we have this English, he's going to work a miracle, a mofet, work a sign. Okay? Mofet, sign, miracle. Let's see what it is in the Greek. Ooh. Got two words here. A sign, a miracle, or a signpost. This Greek word here is or, than, either. Sign, miracle, signpost, or a teras, a wonder, a marvel, an omen, monster. That's an interesting word in the midst of all this. Why a monster? Kind of crazy, out of the ordinary Greek word to have in here. But let's move on down a little bit further. So it says, take your staff, throw it down before Pharaoh, that it will become a tanin. The Hebrew says what? Can you read that at the bottom? What does the Hebrew say that is? Wow. There's the word monster again. Dragon. That's very interesting. Throw this staff down that it may become a dragon, a monster. Well, if we think about the old depictions of dragons, they were monsters. Let's look at what the Greek says. The Greek says drakon, a giant serpent, a dragon. You know what? In the heavens, there's a constellation called Draco. Notice it's the same words as Dracon minus the N, Draco. And so this dragon up in the heavens is real close to Cephas the king, sitting in his chair with his staff in his hand. And Draco the dragon is trying, it looks like he's trying to get to the seat. He wants the chair. Doesn't like just being amongst the rest of the heavenly host. He wants the chair of the one sitting in the seat. He wants that place, which we know that's what Hasatan did. He wanted the chair. He wanted the place. But man, this is crazy stuff. It's not lions and tigers and bears. It's dragons and serpents and monsters. But I want to take your mind to another scenario here as we move through this. They did the same thing. Hold on. Where was this at? I had another. Did I not highlight it?
Is it a 10?
Yeah. So here it is. So you can see in the Greek it says, and before his attendants, and it will be a dragon. And then it says, and Pharaoh, or it says Pharaoh, Aaron threw down the rod before Pharaoh and before his attendants, and it became a dragon. The Greek's pretty explicit there. Now remember, this Greek is translated about 300. Hey, Kenny. This Greek is translated about 300 years before Yeshua, and they took 70 scribes, Hebrew scribes, and they translated 50. 70. Septi is, okay, so it's 70. They took 70 guys. So you would have to have 70 guys agreeing that that word should be dragon and not a snake. Go ahead.
I had heard, because I was looking into this too, and I was watching something where they were talking about the translation of that word.
Mm-hmm.
And the people, at least from this documentary, were convinced that the word was actually crocodile, which would throw, because they worshiped the crocodile. It was in the Nile, and this foreigner, this guy came from out of nowhere, and his crocodile ate their crocodiles.
Huh.
So
Interesting. Very interesting.
I've seen that.
Go ahead, Kenny.
Oh, I was just saying I seen that same one that he was talking about,
Oh, okay. Awesome.
where it had crocodiles and stuff. They even did like a little animation for it. It was pretty cool.
Croc eating another croc?
Yeah, he tosses the staff down, and there's got all of these big crocs out there, and it's almost like prehistoric looking crocodiles. And Moses eats the other ones because Pharaoh's crocodiles were a little bit smaller than Moses's.
That's funny.
Sorry,
Okay.
I'm late. I had to work.
Yeah, no problem. Glad you're joining us. Okay, so it says that the magicians did the same thing. What? So we obviously know this. The Pharaoh's magicians Pharaoh's magicians threw theirs down, and Aaron's dragon or his croc ate the other guy's crocs or dragons. What does this imply about the struggle with Pharaoh? Any comments? What does this imply? What could this be about? Go ahead.
power, the strength, whatever Pharaoh has backing him, and all of his sages and sorcerers, whatever they call on for authority and power, is nothing compared to what Moses has, where his authority and power is coming from.
I would probably guess that the crocodile was probably a very high esteemed thing. And so to have your croc eat their crocs It's like God knew what was going to really get them shook up. Kenny, you had something to say?
Well, I was just gonna say, not only that, but they used to have they held the crocodile in high esteem, so it was also the Most High's showing that that power. Because I believe, didn't they worship the crocodiles there too at a point?
Yep.
And they would like put note stuff in the Nile for part of their worship of these crocodiles, and so it was the Most High what they worshipped as well, and showing that power and authority, like you're saying.
You know, it's interesting that we're talking about this because I'm pretty certain that in the Temple of Dendera in Egypt, where they have the big, huge uh, zodiac on the ceiling of the temple, the oldest zodiac there is, in the center of that circle is a crocodile. And I think he's holding a staff. Let me see if I can see that. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah. Oh, it's funny. So, yeah, it's really interesting. So, you have this crocodile figure, and he's got a staff in his hand. I wonder if they're depicting the whole scene here that happened with Moses and Pharaoh. That could be what that's all about. So I'm gonna have to visit that because it's got my mind on a whole new thing that I hadn't noticed or hadn't thought about. Okay. All right. Aaron threw down his staff. Pharaoh's magicians were able to duplicate this miracle with their own staffs, but Moses's crocodile swallowed theirs up. This shows that the struggle was between God and Pharaoh and the gods of Egypt. Okay? Really cool stuff. All right, let's read chapter 7 of Exodus, 14 through 24. Who would like to read? 14 through 24. Anyone? Volunteers? Go ahead.
Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hardened. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning as he is going out the water. Stand on the bank of the Nile to meet him, and take in your hand the staff that turned into a serpent, and you shall say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But so far you have not obeyed. Thus says the Lord, by this you shall know that I am the Lord. Behold, with the staff that is in my hand, I will strike the water that is in the Nile, and it shall turn into blood. The fish in the Nile shall die, and the Nile will stink, and the Egyptians will grow weary of drinking water from the Nile. And the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, and their rivers, their canals, and their ponds, and all their pools of water, so that they may become blood, and there shall be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, even in vessels of wood and vessels of stone. Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded. In the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants, he lifted up the staff and struck the water in the Nile, and all the water in the Nile turned into blood. And the fish of the Nile died, and the Nile stank, so that the Egyptians could not drink water from the Nile. There was blood throughout all the land of Egypt, but the magicians of Egypt did the same by their secret arts, so Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, and he would not listen to them as the Lord had said. Pharaoh turned and went into his house, and he did not take even this to heart. And all the Egyptians dug along the Nile for water to drink, for they could not drink the water of the Nile. 7 full days passed after the Lord had struck the Nile.
Wow. 7 days, timestamp. Okay, so we're here 14 through 24. Let me back up here to 14. Okay, so questions for you. The plague of blood. When Moses spoke God's words to Pharaoh, did he make God's position clear? Anyone online on Zoom have any comments on that? Did he make God's position clear? I would say yes. Of what was he trying to convince Pharaoh? What was the objective to convince him?
The might of the Most High.
Yes. So God's words to Pharaoh was very specific. This miracle was to convince Pharaoh the Yahweh is the Most High Elohim and the Elohim of Moses. Very interesting, because this water that he strikes is the very water that Moses was drawn from. His very name means, drawn from, or to draw from the water. So it's very interesting. Full circle here. He's coming back to the Nile from when he was pulled out as a baby, and he's going to turn this whole thing into bloodshed. I use bloodshed because the Greek says bloodshed. Very interesting word. Turn the water into bloodshed. Maybe it's like, if you don't let my people go, this is a sign to you. This is going to come upon your flesh, your people. There's going to be shedding of blood in the last sign if you don't do what I'm asking you to in the first sign. Very interesting. Okay. Any comments on Zoom or in here? Okay. So let's read on through. Here's something I've found. When he threw the staff down in the other examples, both the Hebrew and the Greek led it to believe dragon, right? Look what it says here in this time. He says, hey, you shall take the staff in your hand that was turned into a serpent. Well, this is Nachash, which is serpent. And in the Greek, it's Ophin, a snake. A little different over here. I didn't look at that before, but that's kind of interesting. They would use different words talking about the same thing.
In the Targum, it refers to it as a basilisk.
Say it one more time.
In the Targum, it refers to it as a basilisk serpent.
I'm not sure I understand. Oh. Okay. Wow.
What is that?
Yeah, you want to explain?
What is a?
Explain what one of those serpents
What
are.
is it?
Let me double check it so I don't give a wrong explanation here.
It's a cross between a reptilian and a chicken, and it's extremely poisonous and vicious. Wow. Cross between a reptilian.
Huh.
Basically a water dragon. I mean, even when you look up the pictures,
Yeah,
it looks like
I was about to say.
Yeah, it's a water dragon.
Okay. So,
and it's reputed to be a serpent king who caused death with a single glance based on older theories of him. Huh. Interesting.
so let's see. You're saying that's the word that's used here. What we're connecting, which two words? I want to be sure I have this right.
Instead of snake.
Okay, instead of snake. All right. So it's interesting you said a water dragon. Okay. So how many of you watched my Sign in the Heavens Part 1 and Part 2? Anybody?
Mhm.
Watch 1 and 2? Okay. So in the Sign in the Heavens Part 2, I pointed out what's coming up in February the 10th is the moon is going to be in this constellation called Cetus, the sea monster, which is really a sea dragon, which is exactly what you guys are talking about. What's interesting is the two fish, which are representative of Ephraim and Judah, are bound to this sea monster by two bands around it, held like in bondage. The interesting thing about that is if you look at the whole Jonah, which we're going to talk about it this weekend on Shabbat, the whole Jonah thing, if you look at the word fish that Jonah is swallowed by, in the Septuagint, it calls it a sea monster, which is exactly what that Cetus constellation is called, a sea monster or a sea dragon. So here we've been told that Jonah is swallowed by a fish, when in reality, he may have been swallowed by this sea dragon. And what else would we look at as a sea dragon? Is there a word called like Leviathan? Interesting.
Leviathan, yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. So Abba's allowing us to connect some dots here on this chicken reptilian. The reason you say chicken is, well, you know why chicken is because it can also fly. It's got wings, right? Very interesting. Yeah. Crazy stuff. Maybe it has a long forked tongue and maybe it can also breathe fire. Who knows? Yes, Paul.
Yeah, it mentions that the crocodile was represented by the god called Sobek. It's pronounced different ways. Sobek, Sebek Ra, Sobek Ju, or Sukos, or Sobki, the Egyptian god that would be both fear and respect, and it was a symbol of the pharaoh's power. The Egyptians also saw them as symbols of rebirth. In terms of what the crocodile stood for. So,
wow. Yes.
That crocodile god, is also believed to by the Egyptians to have set the universe in order.
Which is probably why it's also on that constellation depiction in the center.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. Margaret, you had something to say?
Yeah, I was just thinking of the Chinese dragon and the New Year, Chinese dragon. Does that fall near the Chinese New Year by any chance?
Do you see the connections you're all making? He says associated with, what was it you said? The
order of the universe?
Order of the universe, and you're pointing out the Chinese say it's at the New Year, this dragon. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Go ahead.
And this idea of setting the order of the universe, you'll see in all these nations that celebrate, they have these festivals and they want to, for the dragon and the 9 gods, their belief is that they took chaos and turned it into order, which is not what Yahweh does.
Wow.
Everything Yahweh does is perfect from the start.
Wow.
And so all this imagery goes back to chaos dragon imagery. This rebellion imagery.
Wow. And so we know chaos is this Hamas that really is lacking righteousness and justice. Very interesting. Wow. What wonderful things we're learning. Do you have something to say, Kenny?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, I agree with everything he was just saying.
Okay. Wow, that's awesome stuff. Okay, so let's read, learning all kinds of stuff about the fish and the snakes. Let's read Yes.
Just one real quick thing before we move on. I also thought that it was really interesting that Pharaoh called his, sorcerers and stuff again, and probably had, turned a little tiny bowl of water into blood, and he was content. It's like, oh, well, we can do the same thing.
Yeah. Look, we did it with a few ounces here.
Exactly. We got the bottled water turn red.
Let's forget that you did it with the whole river.
The whole river killed the fish. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good point. Okay. So let's read.
One thing that's interesting about the turning into blood in the Targum, it says the astrologers of Mitzrayim, by their burnings, had turned the waters of Goshen into blood.
Trying to really affect the Israelites.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Might we see another duplication of the adversary trying to turn God's people's water into blood? Or as the one Greek word says, bloodshed. Water into bloodshed. Very interesting. Let's read verse 25, 7:25 through 8:15. Anybody feel like reading? Or let's go 1 through 15. Any takers? Go ahead.
Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go into Pharaoh and say to him, 'Thus says the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will plague all your country with frogs. The Nile shall swarm with frogs that shall come up unto your house and into your bedroom and on your bed and into the house of your servants and your people and into your ovens and your kneading bowls. The frogs shall come up on you and on your people and on all your servants.' And the Lord said to Moses, 'Say to Aaron, stretch out your hand with your staff over the rivers, over the canals, over the pools, and make frogs come up on the land of Egypt.' So Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. But the magicians did the same by their secret arts and made frogs come up on the land of Egypt." Keep going.
To 15.
Oh, 15. Then Pharaoh called Moses, and Aaron said, "Plead with the Lord to take away the frogs from me and my people, and I will let the people go to sacrifice to the Lord." Moses said to Pharaoh, "Be pleased to command me when I am to plead for you, for your servants, and for your people, that the frogs be cut off from you and your houses, and be left only in the Nile." And he said, "Tomorrow," Moses said, "be it as you say, so that you may know that there is no one like the Lord our God. The frogs shall go away from you and your houses and your servants and your people. They shall be left only in the Nile." So Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried to the Lord about the frogs as he had agreed with Pharaoh. And the Lord did according to the word of Moses. The frogs died out in the houses, the courtyards, and the fields, and they gathered them together in heaps, and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there was a respite, he hardened his heart and would not listen to them as the Lord had said.
Wow. Interesting. So how much time passed between the first plague and the second plague? You said it at the end of that last reading, 7 days. Yeah. Before he came out the second time. So describe this plague that God inflicted on Egypt. Did he give Pharaoh advance warning? Yes?
Yeah, he said, but if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will plague all your country with frogs.
So didn't the Almighty say, I do nothing unless I reveal it through my prophets first? Wow. I like it when our God keeps his word. I won't do a thing unless my prophet reveals it to you. And this is exactly what happened. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Most High. Wow. That's awesome, awesome. Where were Pharaoh's magicians able to duplicate this miracle?
Yeah.
Yep. Interesting. They were able to bring frogs up out of the ground. So Moses and Aaron, they tell Pharaoh that God was going to infest the land with frogs. His magicians are duplicating it also. The Egyptians worshipped frogs as the god Heket. How do you think this affected the people during this miracle? That all of a sudden they were able to summon one of their gods up at random. Yes, Paul.
Yeah, so Hecate was actually a goddess of fertility. And that had to do with the annual flooding of the Nile and several things. So now, if all of a sudden your goddess of fertility becomes a stench to you, to the point where now they're dying in your homes, and you put the symbol that is related to your goddess in heaps so that you can destroy them, that water goddess is no longer, how do you say, kind of has a stink about it, doesn't it?
it becomes odious. So now we've got this kind of run down the list. We've got the croc god gets eaten, the water god, the Nile god has bloodshed, and then the frog god becomes odious. I think God's telling the people something. Whether Pharaoh gets it or not, the people of the land are going to start counting these in order, and which is why so many of them came out of Egypt when the Israelites left. Yes.
Well, and you have the god of fertility being subservient in a sense. So the one that you're hoping brings all the blessing and everything is now, under the beckoning call of this other god, this
Yeah.
foreigner, that'd really throw you off.
Yeah, who's really creating here? Yeah. Interesting stuff. Okay. How did Pharaoh respond to this plague, and why do you think he went back on his word?
Well, he said he would, he'll let them go if Moses would, appeal to God for him. And he changed his mind because his sorcerers were able to pull up a couple toads out of their sleeve or something. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see how, like you said, if the water miracle was a whole river in comparison to a couple of bowls, and the frog miracle was millions upon billions of frogs versus, 5 or 6, that's a big deal. But I wonder, thinking of that, do you think that the rest of the Egyptians, because if there was just a few bowls of water turning red, the Egyptians wouldn't have seen that part of it. They'd only seen the miracle that the God of Abraham did. Same with the frogs. They would have seen the multitude of frogs, but if there was just a few, they wouldn't have seen that. So what's multiplying in their minds? I'm seeing my people doing nothing, and that guy Moses, his God's doing it all.
Well, that might even be part of why towards the end it says that the Egyptians revered Moses, had great respect for him,
Yes.
because they're not seeing that other small little stuff going on in Pharaoh's court.
Precisely.
They're seeing the big picture.
Yep, good point. All right.
Well,
Any-
also too, that Moses's Elohim had authority over their Elohim that they had worshipped, so much so that he could send them back to the water where they came from. So
That's good. Yeah.
they functioned under his authority.
Yeah. I'm not only going to call them up, I'm going to send them back in the water. They're just going to do everything I tell them to do. That's good. All right. So let's read verse 16 through 19, just a few verses here. I'll read it for everybody. Then Yahweh said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your staff, strike the dust of the earth, that it may become gnats through all the land of Egypt. They did so, and Aaron stretched out his hand with his staff and struck the dust of the earth, and there were gnats on man and beast. All the dust of the earth became gnats through all the land of Egypt. The magicians tried with their secret arts to bring forth gnats, but they could not. So there were gnats on man and beast. Then the magician said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of Elohim. But Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen to them to what the Lord had said. So my question is, who brought about this third plague on Egypt, and how did he do it?
I created them out of the dust, and so life from dust. And that is definitely something that Pharaoh's magicians couldn't replicate. One thing that's interesting too, in the Targum, instead of it referring to them as gnats, it called them venomous insects.
Huh. Okay. So Kenny brings up this, I make this point each year, and that is, so what is the finger of God? So the finger of God really is associated with creative power. And so you have God in the beginning taking dust from the ground and creating life out of that dust. So here, Moses strikes the dust becomes a living creature that only the real Most High Elohim can do, and he now is making a separation between what he does and what they do before Pharaoh and his magicians. A distinction. It's one of many that are going to come. He's saying, look, I only have the ability to create life out of dust. Duplicate this if you can. And of course, no one else has the finger of creative power but him. Any thoughts or comments on that?
Well put.
Huh?
Well put.
Paul, you had a comment?
Yeah, so unlike the other ones where the gnats were representing a god, it was this case the Egyptian god Geb, that was the god of the dust or the god of the earth. So coming from that so-called god of the dust of the earth were the gnats that basically became the plague.
Awesome. Awesome. Anyone else have any comments about the plague of gnats? Okay. We've got 10 minutes, so hopefully we can, this next segment. Oh, I have a couple questions here. The Egyptians worshiped Geb, god of the earth, and given the nature of gnats, how do you think the Egyptians felt about this plague? It looks like Geb didn't look like too good of a guy at this point. It's like, man, can you imagine the people in their houses? What where's Geb at? We've been trusting in Geb. Where's he at? Geb ain't nowhere to be found. What was it? Elijah said, call upon your God. Maybe he's asleep. Maybe he's taking a journey. He's on a walk. I mean, Moses and Aaron could have had a lot of fun with this. You know what? Do you have a comment?
I was just going to say, it's really shown how all of these things are connected to an Egyptian deity.
Yeah.
And none of them have any strength or power. They're all just frail compared to whatever, Moses' God is bringing.
And this segment that Ward and I did, that if you want the video, the link to the video, it talks, this is addressed. The 9 gods of Egypt plus the 10th being Pharaoh, and how this Elohim is, what it means, where it comes from. So a lot of this detail is gone into, so it can explain a lot of these things that if some may have questions. And if you're online, you're watching, you can certainly email me at mark@livingmessiah.com, and we can send you the link to that video. All right, so the other question is, were Pharaoh's magicians able to duplicate the miracle? No. So what's their conclusion? It's gotta be the finger. And so the term finger of God can be found in Exodus 31:18, Deuteronomy 9:10, Psalm 8:3, and Luke 11:20. In all cases, it refers to direct intervention by the one true Elohim. Okay. So let's read verse 20 through 32. Anybody want to read? Any takers? Go ahead.
Then the Lord said to Moses, "Rise up early in the morning and present yourself to Pharaoh as he goes out to the water, and say to him, Thus says the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. Or else, if you will not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies on you and your servants and your people and into your houses, and the houses of the Egyptians shall be filled with swarms of flies, and also the ground on which they stand. But on that day I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people dwelt, so that no swarms of flies shall be there, that you may know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. Thus I will put a division between my people and your people. Tomorrow the sign shall happen. And the Lord did so. There came great swarms of flies into the house of Pharaoh and into his servant's house throughout all the land of Egypt, and the land was ruined by the swarms of flies. Then Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron and said, Go sacrifice to your God within the land. But Moses said, It would not be right to do so, for the offerings we shall sacrifice to the Lord our God are an abomination to the Egyptians. If we sacrifice offerings abominable to the Egyptians before their eyes, will they not stone us? We must go 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God as he tells us. So Pharaoh said, I will let you go to sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness, only you must not go very far away. Plead for me. Then Moses said, Behold, I am going out from you, and I will plead with the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people tomorrow. Only let not Pharaoh cheat again by not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord. So Moses went out from Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord, and the Lord did as Moses asked, and removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people. Not one remained. But Pharaoh hardened his heart this time also, and did not let the people go.
Wow. So, interesting things happening here. In what way was this fourth plague different from the previous plagues? Why was this plague different? So in the previous one, God made a distinction between himself and the magicians. Now, make sure I get this right. So with this plague, the flies infested the Egyptians, but did not go near the land of Goshen where the Israelites lived. God was trying to show that he was Yahweh, that he was there in Egypt, and that he loved his children. He made a distinction between what is his and the rest of the nation of Egypt. Remember, one of the things that we talk about is God has chosen a piece of land that's his, and he's chosen a people that is his. And now he's going to show them, look, I'm setting Goshen apart. All this stuff's going to infest everything, but it's not going to infest Goshen. Now, up until this point, has the people gone through all of the plagues up to this point? Has the people of Israel gone through the plagues? Yes. And so one of the things that I'm concerned with, and that is people say, well, we're going to be whisked out of here and we're not going to have any part to do with when this tribulation comes. But that's not the example that God gives here, is it? His people are going through these plagues. What is this, the fourth plague? So they go through almost half of it. Is that 3.5? Is that the 3.5 years? No. They're going through 3.5 plagues here. That's funny. So they're experiencing it, and then they get to now see the distinction that the Egyptians are seeing. They get to be a part of it. And it's awesome because without this distinction, people are like, well, I don't know. But when the distinction is there, it's very obvious that only a God can do these things. Only a creator, one that's in charge and a rule of everything can do these things. Make such a distinction between a small piece, a small little area that wouldn't be small if there's 4 million, maybe the size of Mesa, Arizona. I don't know. So it'd be an area that's set apart, and then the rest of Phoenix and all the rest of the area, they're getting wiped out with flies. So distinction is made. Kind of like, I remember when the snow fell here in Mesa one year, it was only in a 1 mile square. You literally are driving on the road and it's wet, and you come to the intersection and it's like 6 inches of snow. And you drive down to the next intersection and now it's gone. But it's between those two intersections. It came down in a microburst and it was only in that one area. And so God has made this distinction. It's not going to happen here. And these people got to be wondering what in the world is going on here. Any comments of anyone?
I would think that through all the first plagues, the Israelites are watching. And of course, Moses had his concern. Why are they even going to listen to me? The Israelites, they don't have that. Why are they? But I bet you this one was a real boost to show that God does have a personal relationship, that he is there for them, and that this might be something serious.
So is this a major confidence booster to not only Moses, but all the nation of Israel? Yeah. Yeah, this is a big shot in the arm. I mean, what would we think if something so distinctive was happening here in America to the people of God, and they were being sheltered from any calamity, but it was happening everywhere else? It would be unbelievable. I mean, just most people wouldn't believe it unless they saw it. It just would not believe it. Any other comments before we? Okay, so I think I have one other question. I wanted to also note that in these plagues, when Pharaoh asked that it would stop, Moses replied, it's going to happen as your word says. So God confirms Pharaoh's word. He confirms Moses' word. Moses entreats God, and he does it. And he even tells him they're going to depart tomorrow. He gives a timestamp to it. Not like, well, at some point, no, it's going to happen tomorrow. So the last question for the night is, because we've got 2 minutes, what was Pharaoh's initial response? So Pharaoh said that he would let the Israelites sacrifice in Egypt, and Moses objected that sacrificing animals would be offensive to the Egyptians, that they might stone the Israelites. So Pharaoh agreed to let the people go, but he again went back on his promise for any several reasons. It seems that Pharaoh was anxious to fight God. And with that, I'm going to say a closing prayer. We'll pick up next week right here, beginning in chapter 9. So we'll remember chapter 9 next week. Father, we thank you for the word and that we were able to study and learn some awesome, wonderful things, some great topics, some great discussion. Thank you for illuminating things to us, Father, confirming things to us, and shedding new light in other areas. We give you praise and glory that your Spirit is among us and with us, that you're the mighty Elohim that fights for your people, because you are our God and we are your people. Your Am Segulah, your treasured people. We thank you and praise you. In your Son, Yahushua's name, we give thanks. Amen. Thank you, everyone on Zoom, for joining us. Thank you, everybody online, for joining us. May you have a blessed rest of your week. Shalom, shalom.
Laila Tov.